Welcome to the Weaver Sews. I'm Daryl Lancaster. When I hit 1,000 subscribers, my daughter, who is the director and editor for these videos, told me that I should do an AMA, or Ask Me Anything. This is a thing in YouTube land. Viewers wrote in and asked questions, and we answered them. All but one. In fact, a request for this technique is the question I get asked the most. And since I am just hitting the 2,000 subscriber mark as this video airs, I thought I would celebrate by creating a couple of videos to describe a process that I've been using for more than 25 years. A little backstory, because life is full of great stories. When my first child was born, now more than 30 years ago, I found little time in the studio. That was hard for me. I was no longer attending and selling at craft fairs. My income had disappeared overnight, and setting up a loom anyway, was nearly impossible. But I had banker's boxes full of leftover bits of handwoven fabric from my 10 years of weaving yardage for garments to sell at those craft fairs. I had saved it all. Though I didn't have the ability to set up a loom with a toddler in tow and a second one on the way, and I had no money for yarn, I did have a lot of scrap, which to me was just new raw material. And I had a sewing machine. I had an industrial machine at the time that went back and forth, forwards and backwards. And I remember for my 40th birthday, which was so many years ago, asking my husband for a low-end sewing machine that could zigzag, so I could make some of the cool things I'd seen on sewing shows on public television. It was the only TV I got to watch. There were lots of ideas to try, and with my trusty Kenmore that did a zigzag and some other cool stitches, I started making things from the leftovers in the attic. I developed a method to piece scraps together that didn't require seams, so less bulk. I no longer have some of the earliest pieces. They were sold long ago. But I found I could still make clothing from my hand-woven scraps and work around a couple of challenging children.
I love you.
How I pieced the scraps together really depended on the shape of the scraps. In 2000, I was asked to write my first article for Handwoven magazine, the first of nearly 3 dozen that I would write for them over the years as their features editor. The theme was mix and match, and I thought writing about this technique would be perfect. I created this vest for the article. In 2005, I created this runway piece for the finale for the Midwest Fiber Conference held in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. I was the judge for the fashion show that year. All of the pieces in this coat were leftovers in my attic from 2 different production runs of my off-white hand-woven mohair fabric. I went on to use this technique in all kinds of ways, using up my precious bits of leftover fabric. I created tote bags. I created mats. I created project bags. There can be a lot of piecing, like this little kit bag, or almost none, like this project tote made from the end of a towel warp. I even created art garments using this technique. There is a trend now to create no-waste patterns for garments, so there is no fabric wasted. Honestly, I love garments cut from yardage. They fit better and work better for my aesthetic. But more importantly, I just have the best time playing with the scraps. So for this video, I'll talk about what I fused all those scraps to. In the case of garments like these, I use a base of Fusi knit, a polyfusible tricot knit with lengthwise stability. This is a knit tricot with a fusing agent on the back. It comes in black and white, 60 inches wide, and I sell it in my e-shop. Cut each piece of fusing knit to the pattern dimensions with a little bit of extra room all the way around. For softer bags and totes, I use a fusible fleece by Pellon. It's called Fusible Thermolam Plus. I don't use this for garments. It is too stiff. If I want a quilted look in a garment, I first fuse the pieces to fusing knit and then quilt through a punch needle fleece, like Pellon's regular Thermolam. If I want a really strong base for mats and totes, I use Pellon's Peltex 71 single-sided heavyweight fusible. I cut this to the exact dimensions with no seam allowances for things like the totes. One of the things I love most about this technique is that I get to use my art school skills, focusing on composition and layout, not something I usually do when weaving yardage. Next time, we'll talk about laying out one of these pieced compositions and how to fuse everything down. I'm Daryl Lancaster for The Weaver Sews.